Welcome back to Hobby Time in the Murder Basement, where today I get to sit down and talk with Jeremy from Black Magic Craft. Thrilled to be able to talk to him. We have way too much in common. It's actually a little creepy. Stick around.
Who just read their comments for them and filter them so that by the time they're decide to go and flip through, they don't see the worst of it.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that, as you grow, that'll be something that is, I don't know where that line is though. Like, I just started recording us because like sometimes it totally breaks the stream. And so I wanted to give it a little bit of time to figure it out. Yeah, it's one of those things that like I haven't quite figured out what that tipping point is. When does content creation become like the thing that you focus on full time, and then what are the tiers from there? Because like you watch somebody like Jazza, and he just did his whole I need to rethink what I'm doing here video, and like I didn't realize that he's got 5 employees. Like it's not just like him and a friend. It's this is a crew.
And Jazza was a good eye-opening experience for me because you try to gauge what's behind the screen, so to speak. Like as a content creator who's growing, I try to gauge like what other people are doing on the more formal business end, or the mechanics of it. Because I, like most people, kind of just like one foot in front of the next, and then eventually I'm here. And there's been many moments and crucial steps where I thought about something and implemented something, and it made a big difference, and that's how I got to where I am. But there's still so many things that it's like, well, I don't know about this, that, or the other thing. So when I watch other content creators, I spend probably 50% of my mental capacity while viewing them trying to figure out what's going on mechanically behind the scenes of that video, that shoot, but also the greater picture of their business. And Jazz is a perfect example of that, trying to figure out how does this guy manage what he's doing, just seeing the amount of content that he puts out and the type of content it is, knowing that is physically impossible for one person to do, or even two. And thankfully I actually didn't have to keep wondering so much because I recently became friends with him.
Oh, cool.
Like he started getting into the mini stuff, and he did a video that showcased a bunch of us, and I reached out to him, and it was funny because when I reached out to him, it's like I had to do it through his personal assistant, and I had to schedule a Skype call like 3 weeks out, and it was this whole ordeal. Which once we started talking, now I just talk to him on Discord whenever I want, and we talk, intermittently, once in a while, not at length, but just having that inside connection to him and learning about how he functions, even something as little as, hey, I want to maybe collaborate, talk to you, whatever. I have to get my assistant to book it because I don't have time to schedule calls, right? And it's seeing those mechanics and then realizing, oh, he's got a personal assistant. He has somebody who films them. He has somebody who edits. He has somebody who edits the vlog channel. He's got somebody who just orders art supplies for him. Like he has a woman on his team who just like, I'm going to do a video with 5,000 markers. Somebody has to actually source and order all those 5,000 markers, right?
Right.
And it kind of clicked. It's, because there's so many things that I have ideas for, but I'm held back on limitations of resources, which usually is time.
Yeah.
The resource is almost always the most finite resource for me, but that's where you just need other people, right? But that's a big step to go from hobby YouTube channel that you're doing for fun to, hey, maybe I could do this full time, to doing it full time, to growing a serious business that's providing a good quality of life for you and your family, and everything's going really great, to now I'm going to hire on people that will depend on it, right? It's one thing for me and my family to depend on what I'm doing, but now other people, that's a scary thing.
Oh man, it totally. And like I don't know if you watch Girlfriend Reviews, but they just hit their millionth subscriber 1 year on YouTube, millionth subscriber. And I don't remember their names, but girlfriend and boyfriend
Yeah.
was editing videos for a YouTuber, and they just were like, we don't need you anymore, and like shit canned him one day. And so they were like sitting around, like, what are we gonna do? Let's make a funny video. And then, a million subscribers later, 1 year on YouTube. It's crazy the amount of explosion watching a channel like that. Like, you don't get lightning in a bottle that happens that quick, but that is like a team of two people that eventually is going to need the team of 5-6 people. And like you said, like, to me, when you say that you need a personal assistant to schedule a friendly Skype chat, it means that this YouTube channel is their life now, 100%. Like, if you don't have the time to actually make that decision, like, oh, I'm eating dinner, I'm gonna message Jeremy and see what he's up to tomorrow, like that's messed up. That's absolutely messed up.
But at the same time, I think it's one of those necessary evils of making sure that you have a good work and personal life separation, because the pitfall that most YouTubers who transition into full-time fall into, the mistake we make, I am guilty of this, and everybody at my level I know is also guilty of this.
Sure.
Is in order to get to this point, you have to do this, what's called the sprint. And almost every YouTuber has done it. It's the sprint, which is, or the marathon, whatever you want to call it, where you hit a certain point, you say, okay, I'm going to do this seriously. And in order for that to happen, I have to really focus my efforts. And you put everything into it. And for a lot of people, there's an ultimatum. You're working your job, you're doing your passion project on the side, and you say, I'm going to do everything I can to get this channel, this podcast, this whatever, to X goal by X date, or I stop.
Right.
Because you can't do it forever. You can't do both forever seriously. Either it's a really casual thing. There's no such thing as a really successful casual thing. I know people like to think that it does, but
I mean, Adam with Tabletop Minions is the closest example, and I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he doesn't have kids. I think that's
that's a big thing. Having a family makes it a lot harder, because where I'm going with this is that eventually you're using your personal life to drive your success in your business or your passion, and that works for a period of time, and you can do that a lot more when you don't have kids specifically. With a spouse, a life partner, whatever, you have a certain amount of freedom, but you still have another person that you have to dedicate time to. And when you have kids, then it's really hard. So you have to draw lines in the sand. And what happens is you go through that sprint. For me personally, it was I'm going to do this seriously. And it was a family decision, where my wife said, like, at the time my kid was like 2 years old. She was like, okay, well, you can't be doing this every single night all the time. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do this on weekends. And for like a year, the channel was Saturdays, but it was Saturdays from 7 a.m. to about 8 p.m. And I just like went hard, and I did the build, the filming, the editing, the thumbnail, like everything.
Oh my God.
One period. So there was like a year of videos where every single thing for that video was done in one day, and it better work, right? But my wife was the supportive member there who said, okay, I'm going to take the kid out on every Saturday, and we're going to do something so you can just work and do your thing. And also, I'm not going to give you a hard time about not being around, because she knew it was something that I wanted to take to the next level. But we both had the understanding of, if it stays like that forever, it's not worth it. Like, it's not success if I'm just doing that forever while doing the jobs. So, you have a goal. I met the goal, quit the job, did the thing, and then that's great. But then it's hard to remind yourself, okay, now this is the job. do your work week in regular hours. Yes, you work for yourself from home, doing a fun thing, and you have no boss, and what? So it's very easy to work at random hours, put in way more hours than you should be, and that's where people like Jazza, like, the bigger you get, the easier it is to burn out. And you need a personal assistant just to be like, these are the times you do these things,
right?
So that you're not making that Skype phone call during dinner when you're trying to talk to your wife about your day. Everybody deals with it kind of in their own way, but I can definitely see how some people require the personal assistant. There's a reason that job exists.
Yeah, dude, I would absolutely need to do something, because my real problem is like being self-employed. I know the like passion it takes to get it going and to keep it going. I've been doing it for 10 years now. I have a really kick-ass employee and a dedicated business partner / best friend. We are a team. We rely on each other. But I know that if I was to actually push the way I would like to push, I would destroy everybody. I would ruin all of our lives, because like passion and goals they're so fun to like try to strive to, that like I needed to actually look at my life and be like, I can work this hard and have a good, decent life and support, 3 different families with our efforts, or I could ruin it all. Like, like where is that boundary? Like, and for me, it's really hard. And and like doing hobby stuff, I love doing hobby stuff. I turn every single hobby I have into a job. I can't help it. I can't stop myself from. It's not because I want to make money. It's because I want to get like better. And
you want to get good at it, and also you want to be able to focus on things, right? It's like that drive to get good at something, and that all-encompassing obsessiveness can make things like a job. Even if you don't mean it to be like a business in a financial sense, it can become like a job in the sense of putting so much effort and time into to kind of dominate it, right?
Yeah.
And get super good at it. And within my friends group, I'm so bad at that. Like, not bad at it. I'm so prone to that mindset that in my friends group, that's called going full Jeremy. When you go full Jeremy on something, it's like you're like, oh, I like eating tomatoes. Gardening is neat. I should plant a tomato plant. 1 year later, welcome to Jeremy Farms. I have 12 different kinds of tomatoes. This is a new breed of tomato that I've created myself that you've never eaten. Like, it just, and I do that with I've done that with everything in my life. It just so happens that the hobby channel thing was the first thing where I went full Jeremy, where it paid off in a way that was sustainable. Unlike all the other things where I got really good at them and got to a point where, yeah, it was successful, but not in any real tangible, sustainable way.
Dude, like you just explained my entire life. All of my friends, they're just like, God love you, Heath. You are the most passionate person to get into something new. Like, when I stopped drinking a couple years ago because I was having a lot of heartburn problems. Turns out I had a bleeding ulcer that was just like sitting there waiting to explode. And I got into tarot cards. That's been like a big part of my channel, which is something that I want to talk about with you eventually, as well as you. I guess I should probably actually introduce you, Jeremy. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in the murder basement. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing all right.
As you all can tell, we just are in the weeds already, and that's what I'm here for.
It came in hot.
It came in hot. yeah, we're ready for this one. And but yeah, I got from tarot cards went into close-up card magic. Now, trying to convince your wife that learning how to like shuffle cards in a way, like false shuffles and tricks and all this stuff is a really good use of your time is you know, like she's always super supportive, but she actually had to look at me and she said magic is fine, but I'm drawing the line at ventriloquism. Like she was just like, I know where this is going, and you're gonna fucking meet some vaudeville guy, and pretty soon you're gonna bring a ventriloquist dummy home, and I'm gonna be all, you know, like
you're gonna be opening a theater, and then
it'll be Christopher Guest from Best in Show, and I'll be sitting there trying to, you know, say the names of nuts with my hound dog in my trailer, you know, like, nah. She was like, you know the line. It's literally the only rule she's ever given me. No ventriloquism.
Yeah, I get that. I totally understand that, because there'll be times when something will pique my interest, and my wife will see that crazy person glimmer in my eyes, and she'll sometimes just shut it down. Sometimes she'll nurture it if it's to her benefit. Like in early March, you know, similar to probably tens of thousands of people across the world, I got really into bread making. Right? You know? And, you know, I got so obsessed with it, and like learning about yeasts and how they reacted, and doing all these like artisanal loaves. And she was very supportive of that, because it meant fresh, amazing bread every single day.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I mean, like, COVID has been one of the weirder things for the hobby space, for YouTube, because like everybody who didn't have time for their hobby or their passion is now like deeper in it than they ever knew they would be. Yep. And that's is truly exciting. Like, I'm watching groups like the Trapped Under Plastic group be more active and helping each other out. You know, Vince Venturella's Painters Motivating Painters. Like, I'm watching these places just kind of like blossom and grow like exponentially, and that, to me, like, that's only good for the hobby. Like, it's good for all of us. And but it also means that like I'm answering questions that I answered 2 years ago again, over and over again. Like, we're back at it. Like, reset the clock, boys, we're doing this again. That's I mean, it's fine. Like, I'm pretty supportive. I asked dumb questions too when I was into it. It's okay. There really is no dumb questions.
I firmly disagree with that statement. There are absolutely dumb questions. I'll tell you what they are. In general, yeah, there's no dumb questions. But if a question is asked somewhere, typed out, in a place that could take days or weeks or months to get a response,
yeah,
and you type those exact same words into a fucking search bar, you would have those answers in seconds. It's not a dumb question, but it's a dumb way to ask the question.
Fair.
and I think that's like the bane of my existence, of getting asked questions on comments, that if you put those same words into the YouTube search bar, you would find me explaining it in great detail as the first result. But it is what it is. I don't know. I shouldn't complain. I'm happy that people are finding stuff and asking and are curious, and God forbid there ever stops being those new curious people, because it's really important.
It is extremely important. It's like, and you know, I talked with Adam, and he manages to somehow keep a repository of all the stuff that he knows people are going to ask about in his videos, and, you know, does this pachow, which with like 94%, you know, accuracy somehow. Like, it's messed up that he can do that, especially since he one day videos. Like, he thinks about what he's going to do on, you know, Wednesday, Thursday he records his video, Friday it's out. You know, like, that's his routine, and somehow he can do that. I can't. I don't. We're going to end this conversation. I'm going to feel really good about, oh man, I made this new friend. He's awesome, and, you know, likes music. It's all good. It's all good. I will have forgotten 99% of what we talked about here. I'm just, you know, Swiss cheese brain. Too much partying in my 20s. It just flies right through me.
I'm not impressed that Adam can think those things and, you know, form his thoughts in that way, because I'm pretty confident in doing that myself too. What I'm impressed by is that he keeps doing it despite knowing that the vast majority of people watching don't use that link that he pachows. and still ask the question. Because I've done that in the past too, but the thing is, it doesn't matter how many times you say something or which ways you show it. You know, if you say, we're talking about Sharpie markers. Sharpie markers are super good for doing this task. I'm using a Sharpie marker. If you don't know what a Sharpie marker is, there's a link in the description for this Sharpie marker. That's where you can find it. You know, end of the video. Don't forget to check that link to this Sharpie marker if you want it. Guaranteed, there'll be at least a couple comments saying, hey, where do I get that? What was that marker called? Or where do I get that marker? Or where's the link for that thing? It's just the way the internet works.
True.
Adam is a, I don't want to say braver, but a more committed man than I to continuing to reference that, because I gave up. I gave up on, I was like, info cards are a waste of time. Nobody uses them. I'm not going to bother.
Dude, so like I have had, and because I'm still so small, I have had people, and I'm interviewing like a very diverse group of streamers and content creators, you know, from people that have less YouTube followers than me, which is pretty, impressive because I have almost no YouTube followers, to, you know, like you, I think are now the cap of, you know, the broadest audience now at this point of, you got like 270,000 followers. Like that sort of number gives me anxiety. Like I would think about like the days of, you know, back when bands were like a possibility, like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in a band. What's it going to be like playing in front of thousands and thousands of people? Like you do that literally once a week in their living room.
It's a weird thing. Like you get obsessed with the numbers and you start to think about these numbers in an addictive sense, and you just see the numbers and you want to see it growing, and
sure,
you get desensitized to the numbers. So when I look at 270,000 people, that's like someone else seeing the number 27,000, or it's like somebody else seeing 2,700, or it's like the new guy who woke up and was like, holy crap, I got 270 people. That's amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's a scale and you get desensitized to it. However, I often force myself to take pause and reflect on those numbers and give them context. And in those moments, they are both like exhilarating and terrifying. Like to actually think about, I mean, the number of subscribers is sort of irrelevant, right? I think it's a kind of a bit of a false thing to gauge. It's very general, but most content creators who are doing this seriously, and especially as a business, tell you that's one of the least meaningful numbers. It's a dick measuring contest to your friends, right?
Of course.
Like, screw you, like I got more than you, right? To your good friends. It's a friendly rivalry.
Right.
But it doesn't mean anything. The numbers that matter are how many views did the video you put out this week get?
Right.
So if you have there's channels that have 1 million subscribers and they upload a video and it gets 2,000 views. Those 1 million subscribers are meaningless because they're not watching.
Right.
But what matters is how many people are watching, especially a new video.
Sure.
And so that's the numbers that I pay attention to. And those are the ones that are crazy because, so I put up a video on Thursday. We're not even a week away.
Right.
5 days in or whatever since that video. And I look and okay, there's 98,000 people have watched that video in the past 5 days. And I start to like conceptualize that number and I think, okay, when I was doing music, the biggest show I ever played, like the biggest crowd ever played in front of was about 5,000 people. And that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
Stage, you know, when you actually see those bodies filling a space, it's a fair bit. So they go 5,000 people versus, we'll call it 100,000. Holy crap. And you can't even picture that. So then I start thinking, I'm Canadian, so I start thinking about hockey. I'm like, okay, how many seats are there in a sold out NHL game, right? Like in Rogers Place or the MTS Center or whatever. I'm like, okay, we'll call 20,000. It's a huge state, like a huge arena, 20,000 people. And I've been in those crowds for games and they're deafening. There's so many people. So now if I took 5 of those, put them together, that's how many people sat there and watched a dumb video about me painting plastic army dudes.
Yeah.
It's fucking bonkers. Like that's And that's when you go, oh my God, I hope I didn't say something stupid. That's when you're like, I said the wrong word, I said the wrong thing, I gave a bit of bad advice, I didn't cover my bases. Now you got 100,000 people. If only 10% of them pick up on it, and then only 1% of them actually say something, that's still a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, like, as I was talking with like you were the only person who was straight up with me when I reached out to you a couple months ago. Like I was looking through all of the people I subbed to, and I'm like, I want to talk to this guy, I want to talk to this guy, I want to talk to this girl, and I just started sending emails. And Scott, the miniature maniac, didn't respond at all. It was just crickets. And I was like, that's like game on. Like he's not responding. That means there is a room for a tenacious Heath to start talking. You responded back to me relatively quick. Nah, man, I don't have enough time. And I like appreciated the fuck out of that. I was like, oh my God, like totally busy, totally cool. You did leave the door open a crack with the music talk, which I appreciate that you didn't just like completely shut me down. But that was like one of the coolest things that I was like, he respects like whatever this relationship is between audience and creator, to say, I don't have time to do this, but thanks for reaching out. And like that to me like spoke volumes, because it sucks being like just like strung along for forever.
Yeah. And you know what, you know, I'm aware of my own shortcomings in terms of commitments, and with my business, I have to make a lot of commitments to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I have to make sure I can deliver on those. So there's been people that I have every intention of wanting to do something with or for, but in the back of my head, like I have a feeling, I'm like, oh, I can't do it. I don't have time, or it's not going to work, but I want to. Like my heart says yes, but my brain says no.
Yeah.
And I've learned over the years that when you let your heart answer and say, yeah, we'll find some time to do it, and you don't, it feels so much shittier for the other person. And for you, it's always in the back of your head too. Like I forget how old I am constantly. I don't remember my daughter's birthday or my wife's phone number. I'm very bad at retaining certain types of things.
Uh-huh.
But if I told somebody in an email that I would do something really small for them 6 months ago and I didn't do it yet, I think about it every single day. It pops up, might just be a second. And I think about it, and every day that I don't do it, it just chips away, making me feel a little bit crappy. So I've learned to kind of recognize those situations. And don't get me wrong, I get so many messages and emails that the vast majority of them don't get a response. It's just the way it is. I can't respond to it all. And I have to be careful, because there's certain types of inquiries that if I give the kind of response that I gave you, it almost sets the wrong kind of precedence where like I've gotten pretty good at gauging people off of 3 sentences of, okay, if I'm just straight up, you know, I don't want this to bug me, I would love to do it, but I really can't. I'll just let them know. I tell them, you know, I could gauge that it's not going to continue in a negative way. Some people will like, I'll take what I can get and keep coming at you and email you every day because you open the door. And so it's a tricky thing. But yeah, I've learned that I was really tired of letting friends and people down for not being able to do stuff. And it sucks to just say no, but sometimes saying no is better. And sometimes saying no ends up being a yes in the long, right?
Right. Well, I mean, like, the way I kind of look at it is like, you know, context is everything. You said you wanted to talk about music, of which like I'm like thrilled about, because, you know, that's something that I used to do music
I got out of music. As soon as I stopped working at Guitar Center, I actually just stopped listening to music. I spent 2 years of listening to NPR, which is an excellent use of your time. Marketplace with Kai Ryssdal is the way that you learn about the world. But like once I started getting back into music, like it started lighting this passion again. Like I actually had hobbies because like during that whole time I did nothing but play Dark Souls like over and over and over again. I probably played all of the Dark Souls games more times than any other video game now in my entire life. And I realized how unfulfilling that was. You know, like there was this spiritual part of my being totally rotting on the vine, you know, and that was what music gave me in creation. And so like when I got back into music, I was like, I couldn't believe I had gone so long without it. And you know, that was like one of those like weird things of like, how did I neglect this part of myself, you know? And you know, I guess where I'm going with this is like, so since music is what connected us, let's start at music and then work into how music turns into Black Magic Craft eventually, because there's a story that links those two, because you don't get a badass name like Black Magic Craft without having, you know, wonderful like music stories along the way.
Yeah, where do we start? So I guess I should say that we don't just have a broad connection of an interest in music. It's way more niche than that. Because when you sent me the, you know, hey, can you do this? I checked out the page. I was like, oh, there's some interviews. I don't give a fuck. He's got. I see there's modular synths. So what's going on? And we both have. I don't know what your particular musical tastes are, but there's only a certain segment of music that utilizes and obsesses over synthesizers and specifically modular synths. So whatever music you're listening to is probably something that I also listen to or have listened to in the past. For me, I like a lot. It's a shorter list of what I don't like than what I do like, because people who blatantly dislike vast swaths of music don't like music. Like,
right.
If you say, I don't like country music, no. You don't like music.
Yeah.
Because nobody who loves music can say they don't like X genre. It's like there is amazing music in every single style. There are genres that have more things that you like than not. But so for me, my musical tastes are vast, but my main love has always been industrial music. Like I mean, that's my background as a musician. I was an industrial musician, like specifically like dark electro, 2000s, really aggressive black metal, rave music and stuff. But for me, my favorite stuff is like early pioneering in industrial from the 70s and 80s and all the spider splinter things involved with that. I love early experimental synth music. My two favorite bands of all time, if I had to pick, are Kraftwerk and Goblin. That gives some context, I guess. And then after that, you're going to see Skinny Puppy, Front 242, and that's kind of where my linkage goes. But I listen to a lot of stuff, and that's what I made, and that's what I did, and I stopped, and it was a very dark period in my life when I stopped.
It's horrible.
Yeah, for me, it was kind of the culmination of two things. One was, so going back to the topic of going all in on your hobbies and becoming obsessed with them and them not paying off.
Yeah.
That was music for me. So I could say a truthful statement that I was a successful industrial musician. I could also say a truthful statement that I was not a successful musician. It's kind of both, because I mean, I signed a record deal at 16 years old to one of the cool German record labels in the scene that I was in. I have between two projects, I have several albums under my belt. Like I've got multiple CDs, I got vinyl records pressed, I played festivals. I did okay. Like I did all right, and I had a cult following, and I had some level of success. But in terms of actual success, not really, because it was always breaking even.
Yeah.
Right? Shit's expensive. Being a niche musician, even if you're pretty good at it and doing well, you're still, in a subgenre of a subgenre of a subgenre of a subgenre, and you're, oh cool, you just flew across the country or to another country to play for 30 people. What the hell was the point of that? Like, it just, and that really got to me after a while. It was really defeating that I wasn't where I wanted to be or where I felt my music deserved to be. Because you're a musician, you're egotistical about your music, like it deserves better. And it never really got to where I wanted. And I was going through some dark periods with that and inner struggles. And then we had a kid. We had a baby. And all of a sudden we had a brand new baby. My wife almost died in childbirth. It was just one of those like crazy life-changing moments. And so with a new baby, obviously I'm not going to be traveling to play any shows or festivals. So I wasn't even thinking about that at the time. And well, I'm not going to have my studio blasting music super loud while I'm mixing or composing. Holy shit, because the baby just went to sleep. I can't wake up the baby.
Right.
So it was just this natural thing of, okay, I'm just going to take a break from music. And I took a break from music, and it was a break. I was just taking a break for maybe a year, and then the kid would get older, and we'd also moved into a different house, and I was renovating the whole thing, so I didn't even have a studio. So the plan was, kid gets, to be a little bit older, I'll build the new studio, and we'll get back into the swing of things. But it was during that time that I was going mental because I had no outlet. I was bored. I needed something to do. I decided to quit smoking. So I also needed a hobby or an activity that didn't have built-in smoking mechanisms. It was like, when you have an addiction, you smoke cigarettes. If you do another hobby, that addiction's part of the hobby. You're like, okay, when my bass coat's drying, I go for a smoke. When my track's rendering, I go for a smoke. When I lay down the drums, I go up for a smoke. So I needed something that didn't have that. And it was during that time that a friend was like, hey, let's play D&D. And I'm like, no, D&D is lame. I'm not going to play D&D. I was like, okay, fine, I'll play D&D. And I played, and it was awesome. And I loved it. And I was sold immediately. And I started a game, looked stuff up on the internet about it, and I found people making things. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, my day job was a contractor. I'm like, I can build shit. I can find better materials than that. Okay, I'm gonna do this. And I started just making stuff. And so it was the new hobby that had no cigarette addictions tied to it. It was, unlike music, it was quiet. And it was a hobby that I could pick up and drop to a new baby schedule, right? It wasn't like when you're into it, you can't put it down. You can walk away. And of course, being a musician and managing, bands, my own bands for over a decade, part of your brain is just like wired to compartmentalize brand things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to post these pictures of what I'm making on the internet to this Facebook group of a couple hundred people, I need to make a Facebook page as a repository for that so that I can call it something, so I have something to link. It was just like this natural, I didn't have a plan. There was no intent, but you just don't do things that aren't branded after, doing a band for so long, right? So I did that. I was like, what's it called? I don't know, fucking Black Magic Craft. It was just like named in 1 second. That's what it was. And I made a Facebook group, Facebook page, shared photos to a group, and it started getting some traction. And then within like a month of discovering the hobby and discovering YouTube channels, I was like, I could probably make a video about this. Like, I have no idea how to make videos. I've never made a video in my life, but I've been linear based editing on a computer with music for over 10 years. It's probably not that different. And I just decided to make my first video with my iPhone and iMovie and put it up. And that's what I did for like a year. I just like edited in iMovie stuff that I made with my cell phone. And it was terrible, but it seemed to connect with people. And the magic for me kind of happened where I realized that video editing filled that void in my heart from editing music, and being a content creator and being a public figure and having a YouTube channel and growing it filled that void in my heart of being on a stage.
Yeah, sure.
And crafting the stuff filled that void in my heart of composing music. And so all of a sudden, this new thing replaced everything I was missing about music. But the big difference was it was being received so well.
Sure.
And you know, I realized very quickly that there was this really great instant gratification that you don't get with music. With music, you spend a year, maybe 2 years locked in a cave, writing music, putting everything into it. Maybe you and your other bandmates, or maybe it's you solo, whatever. You spend a year or two, maybe even 3, putting your heart and soul into this album. And then it goes off to pressing, it gets pressed, it goes out, and you sit there waiting, and the reviews come in, people buy it, and it's like 3 years of work for a couple week hype of reaction, and then maybe trying to play some shows and stuff. And it was just the ratio of what you put into what you get out was so disproportionate. Whereas with YouTube, it's like, okay, on Saturday, I spend all day crafting something, filming it, and making a video, and I put it up. I spend 10 hours working on something, and I get way more feedback and positive reaction and gratification than I did from this album that I put a year into.
Dude, it's like, like everything that you're saying right there is so like every single day that I talk with any of my friends about anything like that, you know, because all of us are musicians here in St. Louis that I'm friends with. Like literally every single one of my friends plays an instrument, has been in bands, has either toured or had the dream of touring. And, you know, like everything that you were saying is like music is so good, like, because you can write that one song and you can have that one song take off, and, you know, days of the one hit wonder died, you know, 25 years ago. The idea now is that like you are going to have to, especially in now times, you have to release an album like a year. You have to be on like probably like a 16-month turnaround time from album to tour to album to tour, which means your quality of content goes like way down. So I like a lot of people complain about songs right now.
The amount that bands have to tour in order to be a viable business means that they don't have time to be creatives.
Right.
And music suffers because of that.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, with this new outlet, I don't have to be on the road. See, the thing is, I never toured a lot because I fucking hate touring. It's awful. It's my worst nightmare. Like, I mostly played festivals because you get the big payoff in a weekend, right? Without driving in a van and not showering and hoping the promoter pays you enough to buy hot dogs for the night. Like, I never was interested in doing that. And I loved playing shows. Like, I loved being on a stage and playing shows, and I loved composing music, but I just despised everything that leads up to that. I hated packing up gear, being worried that something's going to break, missing a cable, load in, load out, sound. I hated all of it, and the anxiety it gave me was not enough to make up for the 45-minute set that was amazing. It was just the other stuff was too bad for me and my mental health, right? And my mental illnesses. But with what I'm doing now, it's kind of the opposite, where I get so much more of the payoff with so much less of the bad part. It's not that the bad parts don't exist, but the ratio is a lot healthier. And that's why I've stuck with this. And I've hit a point in my life where I could go back to music and stuff, but I will never fully go back to music like that because I think about the idea of like, oh, I'm itching to write an album. And then I just think about the work that goes into writing an album and the payoff for that. And when I say payoff, I mean both payoff in terms of reception and what it does to you emotionally and the feedback and all that, and also financial payoff. Like the whole package, the payoffs are not worth it,
Right.
I get more out of a video that I make in 1 week than I'll get out of an album that I'll make in a year. I know that. And it hurts to say that, but I've made peace with that with myself. And that was like a big internal kind of struggle for me to make that peace, but I have, and it's a very liberating realization.
So smoking never got tied back to you editing videos. I've now been cigarette, really, because like everything with music and me, like when I quit smoking, and I haven't had a cigarette now. I've now been a non-smoker as long as I was a smoker, so I haven't had a cigarette in 10 years, and I still like dream about it. Literally everything that I do in the hobby is like, I'm like, yeah, no, I should totally go and have a cigarette right now. I mean, like,
it's like, hey, I should have a smoke now, and you have to, but I don't smoke. And then it's the longer you go, the quicker that interaction is in your brain, but it still happens. For me, thankfully, I haven't started those triggers with new things. There are certain things in my life that I just don't do anymore because I know that the triggers will be too strong, or that I won't do often. I've been now quit smoking. I'm in year 6 going into 7. So it's long enough to say I'm a non-smoker.
Yes.
But I still dream about it too. Usually my dreams are of the variety of dreaming that I realize halfway through a smoke that I accidentally had a smoke. I'm like, shit, I fucked up, right? But I don't think about it very often. But if I go out in my backyard and I have a fire, like if I want to sit around at night around the fire, I have a half acre of beautiful yard. We bought it for a fire pit. I have this great thing. I loved sitting there doing that. I only do it 2 or 3 times a year because I have to use a lot of mental willpower to not be like, you know what? I can just have one.
Nope.
But I know that I can't, so I don't.
It's one cigarette is an entire carton for me. Like there is no like I can't even cheat. Like that's the thing. I have friends that like casually have the one cigarette with a couple drinks. I'm like, fuck you in your stupid face.
Yeah, that's like my wife. She quit smoking when I did, except that she never bought cigarettes. She just smoked casually. She'd be like, I'm gonna smoke a pack of cigarettes this weekend. And then go 4 weeks without smoking, then have 2, and then go 6 months without smoking, and then smoke a pack of I don't know how. I wish.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That sounds great. That's how I am with alcohol. I will have a couple beers. Maybe I'll have a week where I buy a whole bunch of different beers and have 1 or 2 a night. And then I'll go 6 months without having any alcohol whatsoever, and I don't even think about it, and I don't care. And I have friends who are like, "How the hell do you do that?" Like, I was like, I don't know. I can just enjoy a beer and then not have a beer. But with smoking, no.
It's one of those like weird ones that unless if you are a smoker or have been a smoker, it is impossible to explain it to somebody else. Because like, I used to think I was the like the musician that like the troubled soul that I need to get my words out, and like I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd walk over and I'd light up a cigarette I'd open up a window because going outside sucked, and like I would sit next to the window and I would smoke a cigarette and I'd write like 3 lines in my journal, and it'd always be like something about being disappointed in something, and then I go back to bed. And I realized after I quit smoking that I stopped writing, like totally, like 100%, because I wasn't a troubled, like beautiful soul who needed to write. I was an addict who needed
Who
a
needed to
cigarette at 3 in the
smoke.
morning. Yeah, like
For
I would
sure.
wake up and I'd be like, oh fuck.
And I think that's actually part of why I've been able to not connect video editing or hobbying to smoking the way I did with music. Because with music, my vice, the way it worked was, you know, if I would have a session where I'm working on a track for a couple hours, every half hour or so when I needed a cigarette, I would bounce the track, you know, back in the day, throw it on my MP3 player, go out in the yard, put it on headphones, and I would listen and analyze. But of course, this was function. This was important. I had to see how it would sound on headphones and see it in a different space and listen to it in a different mindset. The smoking was just a byproduct of that, but clearly this was an important. No, I just was finding a reason to go for a smoke every half an hour. But with modeling and with video editing, there's no real way to do that. You know, because we've always, even when I was a smoker, I've always had a hard rule of no smoking in the house. So, you know, I'm not gonna fucking render video and then put that on my. It would take so long that doesn't work. And what am I gonna do? Carry my Mini outside to the yard and like it just doesn't work the same way.
I just like there is a sketch in there that is really funny, and it's only funny to like the handful of hobbyists who actually know these sort of like, yeah, no, I actually have thought about trying to figure out how to make this work. Holy shit. So last week you released this really awesome video that like your career, not to like just like totally like boost your ego here, has been really fun to watch. Like I have watched you early on, long before you went full time, and seeing like you and Scott go full time and like you guys made a concerted effort to say, this is something, the vulnerability of like, this is something I'm nervous about, I'm doing this. Yeah, like it made me like really proud of you guys, and really like I'm, even though like I don't do the Patreon stuff like that, it made me feel like I was being part of your guys's like career, because it felt like you were speaking through the window to me in my living room, and to see those things, it's been great, and it just makes me like feel that much happier to support you. And so then when I see this video about you being like, I'm kind of burnt out and I needed to do something different, and you picked up some Plague Marines and went like full ham on 40K models, like I had this like moment of just like being like, oh, that poor son of a bitch, what did he just do to himself? Why did he just do this? He had a great thing going, and now he's in the weeds now. He's going to be painting minis all the time. He's going to be thinking about this army, and we can't even leave our houses to play right now. And like I had this moment of just being like super proud of you for being like really open and honest about it. I thought that the way that you phrased it, and you tackled your kind of mental health and the hobby and what you're doing as your career really well, and kudos to you for being honest and open about that. But like why 40K? What was it about 40K that like brought you in there? Like, because like when you were talking about doing like narrative games and things like that, I'm like, you can literally do that in everything. Like, so like why was it 40K?
So you're saying, why was it 40K and not Age of Sigmar, not Necromunda, not whatever?
Yeah, or like Judgment, or any Marvel Crisis. Yeah.
The answer is simple, and it has nothing to do with me. There are a list of 20 games that we could name right now that, as far as I'm concerned, could fill in for 40K, and I would be just as happy to do something different, play the game, paint the models. If it was my choosing, 100% up to me, it would have been Gaslands.
Dude, Gaslands, yeah.
The reason it's 40K is because my best friends have fucking 25 years into 40K. These are my friends that, have been my friends before the hobby, and they'll be my friends after the hobby. They're my friends that I played D&D with, but they've also been heavily into 40K for a very long time. So when I was looking for other games besides D&D, we tried Frostgrave. Frostgrave was a good fit because it's a fantasy setting. It's great for me because it uses all the same terrain. I can keep building the same stuff. It's not a big financial investment because the warband is like, it is what it is. You got 20 models and you're good to go. I even got them the models, like North Star Minis, when I was doing some Frostgrave stuff, just sent me a box of each of the models. So I was like, hey guys, we're playing Frostgrave. You don't have to buy anything. Here's a copy of the rulebook. Here's a box of models. Which ones do you want? I fucking built a whole table. All you got to do is play. And we played for a bit, and the games were enjoyable. We did like them, but after several of them, it just became even harder to get them committed to scheduling a game as it was scheduling a game of D&D. Like, it was just, and I was like, well, what's the problem? And my best friend Flato told me, he's like, well, it doesn't have an addiction to it. It's missing the addiction. The selling point of a game like Frostgrave is that you can use whatever models you want. You don't have to keep buying stuff. There's no updates to the codex. You don't have to blah blah blah. You don't have to min max. Just play the game. That is the feature of the game. But to them, it was a bug. They didn't realize it till afterwards, because there was nothing that kept them up at night looking at things on the internet, be like, maybe if I get this, I can do this. And there wasn't that.
Yeah.
Whereas 40K, it's such a beautiful creation in the way that it's addictive. And I'm new to that game, but I can look from an outsider's perspective in on 40K and recognize certain things about it that I go, as someone who used to be a competitive Magic the Gathering player, I see what's going on here. There's this model built in with it that is addictive, of wanting to add more, buy more, do more. There's lots of things to do outside of gaming. It's beautiful in that sense that you can be heavily invested in Warhammer in a variety of different ways. It can be competitive play and just really getting good at the game and the rules, or it's getting really good at modeling or conversions, or it's really understanding lore, or it's reading novels. Like, it's such a vast hobby around one game, much like Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. Dungeons and Dragons is very similar, but there's a very big difference between the two in the sense of one is competitive and one is not. Right. So there's certain things that very much separate the two. The modeling hobby is not so big in D&D. The modeling hobby is big in D&D for game masters, but for most players, maybe they'll paint a mini for their character every couple of years.
Maybe they will attempt to read the rule book. Yeah. Like, gamers in D&D are the laziest motherfuckers, and like the game master has to work so hard, and you're just like,
And a lot of times the ones that are not lazy, they spend all their time developing this huge, elaborate backstory about their character that is such a beautiful, unique, special flower that nobody fucking cares about.
Right.
Sorry, nobody fucking cares. Bring me a stat sheet, have a name, let's figure out your funny quirks as we play, and let's develop the characters. But for a lot of people, when you're looking to hobby outside of the game, there's not much you can do. So they develop their character. A lot of game masters who don't craft world build. But with Warhammer, there's all the modeling that can be all, encompassing and just take over your whole life. And then combine that with digging into lore, and then combine that with, new model coming out. Combine that with, I just lost that game. If only I had this, right?
Right.
It's beautiful. And on that video that I made about it, I got the comments like, you're screwed now. Well, hope you don't like having money. You're going to spend all your money. GW's such a shitty company because they take all your money. And I'm like, listen, I don't care. That's literally why I got into this, because that's how I live. I like all-encompassing, all-in things that are addictive. I'm good with that. Like, that's why we chose this game. And we didn't go immediately to 40K. We tried Kill Team because that, in theory, should be perfect because it's playing their game, blah, blah, blah. And my buddy flat out said, I didn't like Kill Team because I was looking at a table and I saw 7 models. I own $4,000 worth of beautifully painted models. Why am I not playing with them?
Right.
And he's not a competitive player at all. That's why we're jiving really well on this. He's the guy who just gets interested in learning the rules and the story and the lore and the painting. And while if there's people playing, he'll look up. He's so invested in other parts of the hangout and looking up rules that he's not focusing on the strategy, and he always loses.
Yeah.
So we're perfect in that sense of, like, we can play a game and we do not care who wins that game as long as cool things happen.
Right.
Because, you know, that's what I love about D&D, and that's what I loved about Frostgrave is the random game universe nonsense that, like, you know, with certain, like, a game of chess is a game of chess. It's all strategy. Like, there's nothing left up to the roll of the dice, the odds, the weirdness. But with dice games, RPGs specifically, such zany things can happen. You know, the game master says, this is what's happening, this is the scene. Player says, I want to do this. Like, okay, that's what you want to do. How do we resolve that?
Yeah.
Game master comes up with a way to resolve that with some rolls, and you roll it, and just crazy shit happens, and it could be a terrible outcome, but usually people don't care because it was so zany and fun that's what you're there for. A game of Frostgrave, for anyone who hasn't played it, is really amazing in that way that it doesn't matter how good you are at the strategy. At the end of the day, it is so swingy based on dice rolls that just ridiculous shit happens.
Sure.
You know, you're in it to win it. There's no reason you shouldn't win it, and you cast a spell, and the failure of that spell kills your wizard, and then after the game you roll to see wounds and he's fucking dead forever. Like, there's just crazy stuff that happens. And, you know, 40K is a little bit more strategy based and there's less zaniness, but there still is that room for just coolness and that taking a pause where you've set up this game table with cool terrain, you have cool models, you're playing this game, and all of a sudden you both have to go, hey, whoa, stop. Just look at this. That's a fucking cool scene. You just stop and you look at how the models have played out and are set up. And so in that sense, I think it's the right fit for me. And I've always known that, like, there's a lot of things about Warhammer that have always appealed to me. They've just always been overshadowed by certain things that were off-putting or unappealing.
Sure.
And I just hit that magic moment where the threshold was crossed and the equilibrium went the other way. There was enough things that either I realized I was wrong about, like maybe there was my misconceptions and my perceptions were wrong, and I challenged them and I reevaluated them and I came to a different conclusion. And then some of them were things that I was right about, that I saw as problematic, that I'm seeing are being actively corrected within communities. I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe this is the place that I am okay with being a part of, because while it may not be perfect and no communities are perfect, I can see that some of the negative things about these communities, the tides are changing.
Yeah.
Okay,
absolutely.
I'll roll on that tide, you know?
Like, so I have been, like, I got into minis because of Kingdom Death. I love the Kingdom Death models. I don't know if I actually love the game as much as, like, it gives you moments of those, like, oh, holy shit, can you believe that just happened? But, you know, after you have, like, an entire total party kill, like, for, like, the 5th or 6th time, you know, that game, like, kind of loses its edge. Yeah. And you know, and it's kind of just built to go long, which is, I hope that they, you know, revamp the rules or something soon, because, like, nobody really wants to play it with me anymore. They just want to look at the models and, you know, like play the, like, first couple scenarios. Like, nobody wants to get into the weeds in that game with me, which sucks because I got, like, thousands of dollars of Kingdom Death shit just sitting in my case. Like, it's painted nice and looks great.
As nice as a painted model might look on a shelf or in a case, it's just always sad when it's not getting its 15 minutes of fame on the game table.
Right. Yeah, no, I feel it. And so like I got into my buddy, he decided he was going to get into a Drukhari army, and he sold his old Skaven army to get there. I was like, dude, if you're doing that, I had already kind of bought into Kill Team, of which I didn't really like Kill Team because like small guys are cute and all, but like there's giant monsters and tanks and mechs and planes. Like 40K, the actual like models are really fun and cool. So I was like, I'll get into the Necrons if you get into that. And I have, probably 3,000 points of Necrons, and I've literally never played with more than Kill Team because I just started collecting the models, and it's like, this is cool. And then like, unfortunately, the next thing got me, and the next thing got me. But I realized like when I play these games, I don't like playing the big game. Like I like playing like 1,000 points, whatever that is. Like that, like the game moves faster. Like if you're having to go back and check your rule books every 5 minutes in a 2,000 point game, just like a 4 hours disappears, and you're like, did I actually even have fun? Like I don't know if I did. And so like, I think that Warhammer as lore is amazing. Like I don't know if you've done any of the Horus Heresy books, but like I highly recommend.
I haven't read anything because I'm a lazy, busy 21st century person who just doesn't read as much books as I should. Like sure. I love reading, but I read a novel every time I take a week off for a holiday. Like that's my thing, is like if we go on a holiday, I pick a novel and I read it on that holiday. But I don't read throughout my day-to-day life. I just don't have time for it, or I do not make time for it.
Sure.
Right? So for the lore, I've just been using YouTube, right? There's more than enough lore videos to shake us. That you can, like, there's enough of them that I've just been randomly collecting information and trying to process it all, because it must be, of all franchises in the world, the Warhammer lore must be one of the biggest and most developed and most vast franchises in terms of lore that exists. Like,
it's gotta be.
There's a lot. Where do you start? So I'm just like randomly processing like watching what piques my interest, and kind of it's all going into the big brain mush and sort of starting to make a little bit of sense. And that was like I said, there were certain things that were off-putting about Warhammer for me, some of which were my perspective and some of which were justified. And two things that were my perspective that I challenged myself on were related to lore and aesthetic. I didn't like either of them. The aesthetic specifically, I didn't like the models because I was judging them on the sculpts in context of box art.
Sure.
So when I'm saying the aesthetic, I'm talking about what they look like on the box art. I didn't like them because I thought they were so ridiculous. Where okay, so this guy's got a pauldron, and it has a skull, and the skull has a spike, and on that spike there's a little skull, and that one has a chain with a skull, and then there's a spike, and then there's a dick hanging off of it, and like it's just, to me, when I saw it, my reaction was, to me it looked like the nerd and I'm sorry to say this, so I apologize in advance to whoever I'm going to offend. It looked like the nerd equivalent of a heavy lifted coal roller truck with a Monster Energy sticker on it, driven by a guy named Chat. Like, it was just too much. It was
sure.
just too much. Like, my love of visual art comes from a lot more restrained styles. I like Baroque artwork that is black and a couple colors. I like Bosch. I like Clive Barker's artwork. I like something that's, a robed figure with a mask that's off-putting in its simplicity. So when you have what looks like an NFL football player, it looked like in the 80s WWF, were the guys with the red shoulder pads and the spikes?
Oh yeah, the Ultimate Warriors or whatever. But yeah,
It Warhammer looked like WWF to me, and it was
sure.
off-putting. I was wrong about that because I
You
was.
picked the most WWF looking team to play too. Like
I know.
you picked the coal roller, man.
I did. I absolutely did. And the reason I was able to challenge and change my perspective was by one, seeing models that were done in a different, like painted in a different style. That was groundbreaking for me. But more importantly, it was ignoring what the models looked like and starting to look at artwork and looking at the like Warhammer artwork through the ages, the actual like paintings. Like when I saw like John Blanche's paintings that I was like,
Oh.
oh, I love this.
Yeah.
This is awesome. And it's like, okay, I look at that painting of I look at a Plague Marine in a painting and I'm like, oh, love it. And then I look at the box art model, I'm like, this is dumb. I go, but this is the same, this is the same, this is this. Why is this awesome and this is dumb to me? And I realized what it was. And I went, oh, this can look like this. And it was like this eureka light bulb moment of like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I kind of had a similar thing with the lore where I never gave any of the lore a chance because I was viewing it from this perspective of these Ultimate Warrior dumb looking like how can I take this seriously? But then once I saw the actual artwork and got a different, like much darker vibe to it, I was like, oh, okay. So now when I start hearing about the Horus Heresy and learning about it, and my mind is painting these pictures that look more like the artwork and less like the box art, it's all of a sudden cool and not cheesy.
Dude, I'm totally gonna fuck you up right now. Like, so you mentioned Clive Barker earlier, and nobody mentions Clive Barker without actually knowing Clive Barker books. Like nobody's like, Clive Barker is an artist that I like.
I don't have a lot of books on my bookshelf behind me, but one of the shelves is only Clive Barker.
Okay, well, and I see the the cube is back there.
There, the lament configuration.
Yeah, I'm a big Clive Barker fan. I'm one of the few people who thinks that Nightbreed is one of the best movies of that era, and I can't figure out if it's because they got David Cronenberg, who made some of the best horror movies of that era, to be one of the best like villains. But like I love that shit. Cradle of Filth did an entire album based around Midian. God damn, it was so good. But if that's the type of shit that you like, you need to like start up a free Audible account. Let's get a sponsored ad in here, and you need to download Fulgrim, because Fulgrim is I think it's book 5 in the Horus Heresy. It is all about the Slaanesh, the demon taking over Fulgrim, and it's a Clive Barker album, and I just like sat there and I listened to the whole book and was like,
that brings me back to my original mindset about Warhammer. Friends would be like, oh, you would love Slaanesh. They're like the Cenobites, man. It's like they're the demons of pleasure and pain, and they're all like Cenobites, and they're cool. And I'm like, fuck yeah, maybe I'll try this Warhammer thing. There's Cenobites? Awesome. Let's go to Games Workshop. Come look at Slaanesh models. These look stupid.
They look stupid.
These look like dumb sex elves. Like these.
I'm all about the Keeper of Secrets, though. This one's fucking rad.
There's like 2 models that I think are very cool, like 2 big models, but just the minions, like, I'm like, sorry, these are not Cenobites.
No, they are not.
But I bet you the lore and the books probably 100% is.
It's not pleasure and pain. That your friends are taking it too base. It's not pleasure and pain. It's excess. It is everything all the time. And for somebody who understands I'm going to go bounce this out and I'm going to smoke the cigarette and listen to my, masturbatory, like, that the bounce sucks. Like, you're doing it because you need this thing. That is a story of want and ambition that is it's soul crushingly good. Like, it's the only thing in the Horus Heresy story that has even come close to something that I'm like, you know what? You don't like Warhammer, but I think you would like.
Does that book stand alone on its own though, without reading the? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You could just do that one, knowing the fact that this is 10,000 years ago, and there are Primarchs for every chapter, and Fulgrim is the Emperor's Children Primarch. That's all you need to know. It's a total standalone story, and it's my favorite. It's one that I love that story.
So on the topic of Clive Barker and Hellraiser and Pinhead and all that stuff, fun fact, I got to throw some shade at my friend Scott Miniak. So Scott loves horror movies. He's a horror fan. So I went to stay with him for a little bit and talking horror movies, and I realized that we are both horror fans, but we are very different horror fans. And not different taste, but just I have 3,000 DVDs of horror movies made between 1970 and 1998. And that's where my interest stops.
Sure.
2000s for me. As soon as they did the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake, it was all downhill for me and losing interest. So whereas his tastes kind of started there, and it was cool because all the best movies that I consider classics and must watches, he'd never seen. Like, he's familiar with them, but never watched them. And then all of these new amazing horror movies that are actually really good that are just out of my radar because I've lost interest. That's what he does. So, we watched a bunch of movies in the downtime between filming, and it was kind of like, what do we have to make the other person watch? So when I found out he hadn't seen these two movies, my picks for him was I made him watch Hellraiser 1 and Candyman.
God damn it, Candyman. Oh.
Yeah.
So good.
And thankfully, he liked them. Because there's always that concern of, somebody who's... Sometimes things don't age well.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, age with them, it can be off-putting. But no, he was in it. So
yeah,
that was good.
Well, and you did a diorama based off of the Return of the Living Dead. And one of the things that I think, my wife and I, the first thing that I realized that I was going to fall in love with this woman is I asked her what her favorite music is. That's a really good litmus test for me. What music do you like? And she said, my favorite band, Slayer. And I, joking, was like, do you want to get married? And then, 5 years later, we got married because that was a thing. And when
fun interjection, me and my wife's first date was a Deicide concert.
Holy shit, dude, your wife is awesome.
My wife is the metal one, I'm the electronic one. So yeah.
And so it was her idea to bring you to a Glenn Benton show. Oh my god. That's amazing. They say that metalheads, people who are into intense music, are the most loyal to their spouses, regardless if that means you have side pieces and all that shit, whatever,
loyal in whichever way you want to define loyalty, but
right, the relationships that are bonded around metal and extreme music are permanent. And that was one of our things. And when I lived in Oregon at the time, we drove out to Oregon to get all of my shit or flew out to Oregon to get all my shit and drive back to St. Louis. We were going through my DVD collection, and she was like, Return of the Living Dead? I was like, hell yeah. And at that point, we just kind of knew that this was going to absolutely be the forever thing. And I think that was when I reached out to you again, because I saw your Return of the Living Dead, and I was just like, God damn it, dude, I love Return of the Living Dead. Here's the music that I've been working on. Hope things are well. And it was just like it was so cool seeing you do something, you know, totally out of the norm, and also like back into like the idea like you have done so much cool D&D stuff, but it doesn't have that like kind of horror edge and vibe with a name like Black Magic Craft you would expect. So when I saw that, I just was like, oh, this is kind of a return to form. This is cool. Like,
right.
I loved it. I loved seeing that. I love the way that little diorama turned out. I'm so glad that you put in the extra effort into it. Like, it was not lost on me.
Do you want to hear the real soul crushing thing about that diorama though? So the main thing was a zombie diorama, but there was definitely the subplot of the base from hell.
Yeah.
That fucking one part, you know, shrunk, filled it, painted it, shrunk, filled it, painted it, shrunk, filled it, painted it, and finally, like, in the second video, got it good. That model, that thing was built now several weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was cleaning up my shop, and I looked over it, and I was like, what the fuck? And I see it sitting on my shelf, I pick it up. That section that kept shrinking and getting refilled, the milliput expanded. So
what?
Now that piece, that chunk is now like 2 millimeters proud sticking out. And I was just like, what the fuck? How does milliput expand? I don't know if milliput expands or the MDF climatized and shrunk, but like it is now way worse looking than it ever was throughout that video series, but in the opposite direction. And I was so upset by it. And I will, it's very rare that I will now do something or fix something once the video is done, because like whatever, because especially if it's like game pieces, because they get thrown around, who cares? You know, they're not pristine artworks, but something like that, it was a thing that to me I felt more was a piece of art. So I will take the time. I'm going to take it. I'm going to fucking belt sand it smooth again, and I'm going to fix it. But I almost thought about making the clickbait part 3 like the fucking return of the living dead base from hell. Like it was sad, man. It was sad.
Dude, I feel so bad for you. And like that, I mean, I've never really done the scenic bases, the dioramas. Like I'm right now thinking about my first real one, and like I'm working on a Gundam right now as I'm like learning how to like do these like things, because like I don't really want to do you know, a game piece like diorama, because like I don't have a lot of extra money, and I don't feel like cannibalizing one of my armies to make something, you know, just to have a cool scene, because like they're toys that I should play with eventually. So I'm thinking about doing a Evangelion, you know, like Neo Tokyo like scene, and like I'm sitting here like playing this out, and I'm like, what am I getting myself into? Like I've been dreaming about it like for the past 3 days.
And the weird thing about it is that when you look at really nice like vignettes or dioramas, all the shit you're looking at, you're like, wow, that's amazing. Look at like all the little grass and the little tree details and the water and the wave and like all these things that you key in on going, that's amazing. That took so much work. No, man, that was the easy part. The hard part on these things is the frame. You're a framer, right? That's your trade.
Yeah.
The frame is the hard part on these things. Getting just that black outside thing, and not just getting it nice, but, and a lot of people don't understand this. They don't necessarily they don't visualize things in this way. You know, they go, well, why is it cut away like that? I don't understand why it's on an angle. Why isn't it just a square that's a scene? But there's the art in it is the perspective and the cutaway and the black. The black on the outside is what makes all of that work. And getting that right is something that I severely underestimated just how hard it would be. I thought with my knowledge and my skill set, it would be a breeze.
Yeah.
But it's not.
No.
So now when I see this stuff, you know, I'm more impressed with it. And for me, I put a lot of work into it too, because I see a lot of content creators and Instagram people who are phenomenal painters, like 100 times better than I could ever hope to be. They really do breathtaking miniatures. They do really nice bases. And then I look at it and the mini's amazing. The scenics on the diorama are amazing, but then I look at that black base and I just see like chunks under the black where like they poured water resin and peeled away the tape and it bled through, but they didn't sand it. And it just kills me. I that's always been a pet peeve of mine. So when I'm going into these now, I'm trying to get that one little part right. And it's almost silly as a content creator because it's not the most exciting part, but it's important to me. And yeah, it's been a struggle. And I don't know when this conversation will air on your channel and what will be live or not on mine. But today, in IRL as we talk, I was filming, I did what was planned to be the nicest little diorama base I've ever done. Something very small, something only about that big, just for one small 28mm mini. And I did everything right. I really took my time. I actually cut up like a plastic, like credit card on the outside, sanded it. Like it, I got that frame beautiful, got the scenics beautiful, and then went to pour the water effects. And in my infinite wisdom, I tried a new clear resin, and I told myself, you've never used this resin before, you should do a test. And I said, no, I wing things. That's how I roll. And even if things go bad, it's never so bad that it ruins it. I just go with it. And if something goes kind of bad, then it'll make for an interesting little thing on the video. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to mix in like half an ounce of resin, like 2 tiny drops of Agrax Earthshade. Like, it's not going to cause a big deal. I put that stuff in 5-minute epoxy. I put it in different water effects. I've never had it throw anything off. It'll be fine. Mix it up, pour it, thinking I should test this. I should test this. But I said, nope, it's not how I roll. Just do it. My advice to you, the viewer, is test it, but I'm not going to do as I say, not as I do, right? And I poured it. And within about 10 seconds, I realized I made one of the worst crafting mistakes I've ever made, because it turns out the resin that I was using was a smooth-on one. It must have been, I think it's polyurethane, polyethylene, poly something. It's one of the resins that reacts very badly with water.
Right.
That tiny drop of oil in there, that little bit of acrylic oil wash, it made it foam. Like, it just, like, it looked like expanding spray foam, like grapes.
Whoa, yeah, yeah.
It just, in seconds, just went and hardened and just destroyed the whole piece. I was just like, it was so bad that I wasn't even mad. I was just like, this is what you get for being a dumbass. And
wow.
Yeah, it was a very painful learning experience. So I assume that, I don't know how far out you are, that video for me will be out in a week and a half, like not this week, but next week. So by the time your show airs, maybe it's already been out and everyone will know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So now that mini got completed on a very small 1-inch base, just to wrap it up.
Man, like, yeah, all of those effects and all those things. I mean, like, Luke APS just had one the other day too, where like his resin didn't set up, because he did something, cut a corner, and he's just like, son of a, COVID has messed everything up for him. And, so he's just like, yeah, no, this is going to be fine. Like, no, like, so much of this is actually truly not fine. Like that.
I would say that almost every decision I make, I go into it knowing, hey, if I don't take this precaution, this could go wrong. However, that precaution will take X amount of time or effort. And I weigh it going, you know what? 95% of the time when I take the risk, it pays off. 5% of the time, it doesn't pay off. When it doesn't pay off, all the times when I risked it and saved that time equal out the one time when it doesn't. And that's kind of how I look at life. And for me, like, my career background was a contractor, doing renovations, building houses. Things were on tight timelines. You had to get creative. You had to do things. And that's how you rolled. You got shit done. and you used every trick you had, and you didn't have time to mess around and test things. You just did it, and you're like, if it doesn't work, I'll fix it. And the odd time it's unfixable and you have to redo it. But the time it takes to redo it that one time pales in comparison to all the time you saved all those other instances.
Of course.
Incremental time loss of testing and effort. You gotta weigh it. And that's kind of how I look at safety too. That's like one of those things that like I get shit on a lot for, just, oh, don't cut towards yourself, that kind of stuff. And it's like, listen, when I'm using a knife, I'm not going to say what I'm doing isn't risky. It is. Like, sometimes I do things that put me at a risk for cutting myself, but it's a controlled risk.
Right.
I never go into a risk where I'm like, if I slip or if I do this, it will cause this sort of injury no, I won't take that risk. But if I'm doing something that's comfortable and works and I know that there's a possibility that I'll cut myself, but I know that the cut will only be this bad, I take that risk. And sometimes I cut myself and that's okay. It's like, yeah, there I cut myself,
Dude, I like seriously, if the little bit that happens is you get a little bit of blood on your stuff, like it's not that big of a deal. Like
it's mostly inconvenience because you're like, shit, I'm eating on stuff.
Yeah. Well, and like, in picture framing, you like bleed a lot until you get good enough or your hands get nice and calloused enough that like you're handling raw pieces of glass that you're like, yeah, anybody else, they are covered in, glass splinters and have cuts. Like at this point, these hands don't cut the same way normal hands do. And yeah, it's always the trade-off, like what are we doing right here, like how we can save some time, how we can because I mean, I hate to be that guy, but time is money. And like it's the one thing, every time John on Trapped Under Plastic says it's the only asset we don't get back, the older I get, I'm gonna be 37 this year, and I'm like, I feel that more and more, and like I want to spend my time doing the things that are emotionally fulfilling, and sometimes safety is not fulfilling.
And it goes beyond time is money. It's not just money, it's just time is valuable, right?
Valuable, yeah.
I can get money. Right? Like I can't get more time. Like
right.
Time is the most finite of resources we have, and life is way too short to waste a lot of time doing shit you don't like. Now, a lot of us have to do a lot of shit we don't like because that's how the world works. You gotta sometimes work a job you don't like. You gotta cut your grass. You gotta do whatever. Like that's reality. But the more of it you can avoid, the better. And it's one of these things where there's a lot of things that I would rather spend money on than time. If there are certain hobby things that I would rather buy. I would rather buy grass tufts than make grass tufts.
Absolutely.
I want to use grass tufts. Would I enjoy the process of making them? No. So I'll buy them. Someone else might enjoy the process of making them, and they should make them. I get a lot of enjoyment doing hobby shit that other people don't enjoy. They should pay for ready-made things. Like it's okay to cut corners and save time by spending money or doing something sketchy once in a while. It's all about finding the things in a task that you really like and that you really dislike, defining those things and just finding ways to do more of the good one than the bad one, right?
Yeah, no, I feel you there, like wholeheartedly. So I've got like we've gone like super long, but I'm all right with that. This is a lot of fun. You started having problems with your D&D group, and like D&D is one of those things that I think we all like the idea more than we actually like. Like, oh, dude, it's going to be so good. We're going to do this thing. It's going to be great. And then, it's a struggle to get people to show up to do their, to be ready to be like part of it, and to be present. I go back to,
there's this documentary about Maria Abramovich that was on Netflix called "The Artist Is Present," and it's all about like she would sit and look at people in their eyes for like 5 minutes and they wouldn't say anything. They would just together. I think about that so much when you're the GM and you've put in this effort and you're like, all I really want is you guys to be here. Let's experience this thing together. It'll be fun. I'm not going to tell you how to play the game. I'm not going to like railroad you. We're going to have a shared time. And I find that D&D is when it's good, it is some of the best times I've ever had. But like when it is just
bad, it can be soul crushing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can be a truly painful experience to have a night of D&D that goes sour in a way that is very disappointing. It can be really, really hard. And I think like the biggest skill, there is more resources on YouTube than one human could watch in a lifetime about how to be better at playing D&D, running D&D, doing D&D, every aspect of D&D. But the most important piece of advice for D&D that rarely gets mentioned is appropriately setting your expectations. Whether that's as a player going into a game or a GM running a game, a new person trying it, check your perceptions of like your expectations are, because it is not going to be what you think it's going to be in your head. It really won't. Whether that means, hey, I've been watching Critical Role and never played D&D, and this is what D&D is, and I'm going to join a group at my library. It will not be anything like that. And if you go into it expecting it to be that and thinking that that's the only good way for it to be, you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
If you go into it and like, not even expect certain things, but just go into it knowing it's not going to be what you expect and roll with it. And as a GM, when you have this night planned in your head and you think how it's going to be, how it's going to play out, how people are going to react, it doesn't always go that way. And if you don't keep that in check, it can be really hard. And that's something I've always struggled with. It's like, it's one thing to say that. It's another thing to actually live it and do it. And there's some people who are so good at it that they don't even know a bad game of D&D. Because every game of D&D is a good game of D&D because, hey, it's a game of D&D and they're having fun. I'm not that person. And there was more bad nights than good nights for a period. And then it's like, well, then the world is like, fuck you, there's no nights. Like it kind of self-corrected. It's in a weird way. And, you get thinking about it and you go, you know what? It's okay to walk away from this for a little bit.
Sure.
For me, I think I resisted that longer than I might have if I was somebody else, just because of what my career is and what I do. Like, it felt important that if I'm going to be presenting stuff for people to run tabletop games, I got to play those games. I don't want to be a faker. Right?
You fucking poser.
Exactly. But then I also realized, I'm like, you know what? I'm also a human being, and I'm struggling with something about gaming that a lot of fucking people struggle with. So it's okay to recognize that, admit it to myself, and then share that with everybody.
Of course.
Because this is an important lesson. Like, listen, if you're struggling with your gaming group, your game, whatever, you're having a hard time, you're feeling bummed out about it, and then you watch a guy like me and go like, oh man, well, it must be nice to be Black Magic Craft and his friends group. And it's like, no, man, our group is just as fucked up as yours. We have problems. We fight. There's drama. There's scheduling problems. I am not into it. Like, it is just like everybody else's, and that's normal, and it's okay. So don't think that it's unusual. So that's kind of like why I dedicated half of that last video to explaining that. It really wasn't, I could have just been like, hey guys, I'm going to try Warhammer. Like, really, that video didn't need that first third. It could just be, hey, I'm trying Warhammer now. I picked Plague Marines. It's pretty cool. I discovered this stuff about Warhammer. But the context of D&D's not working for me right now. was a really important message for me to share, because that's the reality of hobby life and of gaming and of everything. Could be like music. Shit goes like that with bands. Sometimes, just like a gaming group that you're like, or a bad relationship or a band, you're holding on to the tiniest sliver of why you're there, but really sometimes you need to break a bad relationship.
Sure.
And reassess and try something new, try a new relationship, and that's all good.
Sure. So were you doing like standard 5e stuff, or like had you like done a deep dive into the weird world of the OSR at all?
So on paper, technically we were playing 5th edition.
Sure.
But we were playing a version of 5th edition that I had over time house ruled and changed so much of that somebody who only plays 5th edition proper would be confused or jarred by many things throughout my game. So I was playing 5e, but I was playing my own version, which would be very similar to ICRPG, for anyone that's familiar with, like Hanker and Fernell's Runehammers. He created a tabletop role-playing system that was essentially like he had house ruled 5e so far that he's like, wait, this is actually a system?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna like put it in a book and make it a system. What I play is there's a lot that I've pulled from that. So if he's gone from 5e to ICRPG and this transition of house ruling, I'm playing something that's maybe 75% of the way there. Like all the major rules and things, I'm actually, the way the game operates, I'm pulling more from how his system operates. But in terms of like classes and abilities and like the player's handbook, I'm pulling from the proper.
Sure.
So my players can just make my players' character sheets, and the characters they create are D&D 5th edition through and through. But the way I run encounters and initiative and different things like that are not the way it's laid out in the book. And some of them are things that a lot of people do. They're not hugely different. It's just things like we don't roll initiative in the same way where everybody rolls and then, okay, you go first, then it's him, and then it's me, and then it's it. Roll initiative. Who wins initiative? Cool. You start. Table order.
Right.
Right. I don't want to bookkeep that back and forth. Stuff like, okay, the combat is done. Initiative is over. Now we're just into role play. A lot of the time I keep turn-based initiative for that, just to keep things streamlined. My monsters, I don't use this massive, complicated stat blocks. My notes for a monster are, he has this much health, this is his AC, he does these two things.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
If I have 10 goblins or cultists or kobolds or whatever the monster is, they don't each have hit points. No. They have a hit point pool. And I keep track. 10 hit points kills a goblin. You do 8 to that one. Okay, now you do 2 to the next one. Well, that kills that one. Well, how come he died on only 2 hit points? I don't know, he's weaker. So I use hit point pools and all these things just to keep things. There are a lot of things that I've implemented to negate some of the negative things that I dislike about the game and keep things running smoothly so that you can focus on having fun and a smooth night.
Sure. That was always like, so I'm new to the GM aspect of being Dungeons and Dragons. And that was something that like I found myself like watching like one person in the group being like super into it, and like all the rest of the people be like, okay, so we're just rolling dice at this thing. I'm like, yeah, you're just kind of rolling dice at this thing until you manage to kill it. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, there is 47 hit points left. And I'm like, and you scared it off and it ran away. Let's move on. Like, you guys all get X amount of experience points. Like, I think that's part of the trick of being a GM is like understanding that your game group is going to need a more hand-holding in that aspect of it. Because like on paper it sounds really cool, but in like,
especially if it comes down to like solving a puzzle or a problem or a mystery, Okay, if you think that what you're giving them is kind of obvious, it is a fucking enigma they will never sort out. Okay?
Yeah.
If you think it is glaringly, stupidly, childishly, blatantly hit you in the face obvious, that's probably about right for creating a little bit of mystery and dynamics. And not because the players are stupid people. They're not. This is true of all people. Just in the minutia of the game, things that you think are obvious just aren't, because they only hear what you're telling them. They don't see the whole picture in your head, all the little micro details that you're subconsciously are there. You haven't relayed that to them.
Right.
And even if the things that you have relayed to them, they're only processing a portion of that, and then they're putting their own like things have to be a lot more handheld for sure.
Yeah. Like my group, we spent half of an evening having them walk upstream to a waterfall where there's literally nothing. And I'm not going to tell them not to go up there. Do it. That's fine. They had some really fun character interactions. And then the next day, they wanted to go up the stream the other direction, of which, like, at a certain point, like, there was no rules. So I just had it like, it's a magical loop. And you ended back up at the other thing, like, because whatever they were doing, I was like, they're never going to get back onto this. I need to put them back here.
There is something to be said about railroads. Sometimes people need to get on the tracks.
Yeah, right.
You don't take them all the way to their destination, but you just put them in the right direction again. And it, for better or worse, that actually makes some of the best moments in D&D though is when you're like, okay, I have this crazy elaborate room with environmental hazards and this crazy mage and a monster and all this stuff, and they're getting to the door, and they literally spend an hour and a half in real life time talking about and figuring out what to do to this crazy magical trapped boss door, blah 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 blah. And at the end of it, it's like, did you try the handle?
Right.
Like, it was just a normal unlocked door. You guys created this vision in your head that it was some complicated thing. And I'm not going to stop that because it's hilarious, and that is some of the best moments. But sometimes you want them to think something's a problem, and then they just don't see it.
Yeah. That's always so hard. You know, the one thing that I'm starting to lean more into, like, I'm way into like the old school, you know, BX D&D, the advanced D&D stuff, just because like they just don't tell you what everything is. They just leave it up to you to figure out. And one of the things that I've been reading about is like Mork Borg. Have you seen that at all? Dude, so it, for someone who's into extreme music, they made it basically for you. It's just like a murder hobo D&D game. It's rules light, heavy, everything else, I think is the motto. And like, it's all just about like rolling a dungeon randomizer, and then you like go through with your friends just to do things. So you can, it's for people who are tired of the minutia, and it's just like, you're going to die quite a bit. And like, there's
making characters, you know.
Yeah. Like, you just do this thing, you have fun with it, you're hanging out. But then like, there's a mechanic in the game that if you want to get into it, there is things there. But every time you play, you're supposed to roll on this like revelations table, and if all of the seals get broken, it's the end of the world, and it tells you to light your rule book on fire and quit. like it's one of those things that I'm like, these guys absolutely understand that like games need to have like consequence when you play them. That needs to be brutal and needs to be fast, because so many people just can't handle it. And when you give them too much freedom to exist in this world where magic does happen, you know, like it's decision paralysis. Like, what do you do? Like, how do you force a thing to happen? This is just like, no, we're going to go to this dungeon, we're going to kill these things, and then we're going to get the loot. And there's something about that I'm like, I think that's more the angle I want to head in now. Like, these big overarching stories, like, I don't know if that's really me. Like, I love the art, I love that, but like I need something that's just like, and right now.
That is a big contributor to my GM burnout, is that I want to make dungeons, and I want to design video game levels. That's
Sure.
how I like to, I like each room to be a video game level, be it a puzzle, a boss. I like to have a boss that shoots this thing, and like I like combat. That's why I should probably just fucking play Warhammer, right? I like combat, and I like doing dungeon crawls. I don't like writing up politics and interpersonal story. I'm not George R.R. Martin, okay? I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm George Romero. I want hordes of things that you have to kill. And unfortunately, a large section of my play group really yearns for storytelling and character development. And I was just like burned out trying to make that happen when I just want to like plan a cool dungeon that has 3 cool encounters. That's it.
Yeah.
Like I want my RP to be 15 minutes of exploration and conversation that leads to the next murder room.
Right.
That's what
it's a monster closet. I want you to kill the monsters.
Exactly. And I think my style of game mastering and desire as a game master is like perfect for a lot of people, but it's not necessarily perfect for my group of close friends that I play D&D with.
Yeah,
it is what it is.
So I've been like collecting all these like little black hack things and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So this is called Stay Frosty, and it's fucking Doom in a goddamn like RPG. I'm like, this is amazing. I've got like Mothership and stuff here. I've got all these like the zine culture right now has got me so excited, and like none of my friends are really that interested in it.
It kind of like, but it kind of feels like the old days of music, of zines and underground publications and mixtapes and stuff like that. And that's kind of like part of why I was so excited too to find about the whole like Inc. 28 movement. I'm like, fuck, this is like the time when I found that weird German zine that I couldn't read, that was all about weird industrial bands. I just looked at the pictures and like there was no Google to like look up the bands. It was just like that cool excitement of the unknown, and it was a little bit mysterious. There's nothing mysterious about D&D these days. Like there's these little pocket communities, and they're really exciting, and I think people need to dig into them a little bit more, or at least I do.
I'm with you there, and like I think that the hobby is at its best when you're bolding, making like taking risks and making like choices that because so many people, especially in like the Warhammer communities here, like they are in this like 100% decision paralysis thing. They just don't I don't know, like, should I do this thing, should I do that thing? I'm like, just fucking do that thing. Like, it doesn't matter. Paint it blue, like paint it red, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. Just make a decision and move with it. And so when I saw you do the Plague Marines, and you saw that kind of Blansetsu sort of like style, I was like, thank God I'm not watching a video of him like just pining for every decision he has to make on these. And you're just like, I'm doing this, and the picture of you leaning back, painting your minis. I was like, son of a bitch. Like I'm gonna watch him paint whatever he does on this channel from here on out, because there's something about like the confidence that you put into it. And I don't really want to watch another Warhammer channel, but I will watch Jeremy do Warhammer, because at this point now with Black Magic Craft, it isn't your D&D terrain, it's you. Like, I'm here for you. Like, and I've, even though this is the first time we've talked, like there's a weird hidden relationship formed between the viewer and the content creator.
100%.
And so it's exciting. I'm excited to see what the next phase of this is. Do you think that?
Sorry.
Do you think it'll be more Warhammer? Do you think you're going to do more Warhammer terrain?
I mean, here the funny thing is, I have at least like a dozen videos on my channel that are Warhammer terrain. I didn't play Warhammer because sometimes I just wanted to build an oil tank, right? So the notion that because I'm playing Warhammer now will somehow drastically change the channel, it doesn't actually make sense. It's like, well, no. That first of all, I already did some Warhammer stuff, so now I'm still going to just also do some Warhammer stuff.
Right.
you know, as I said in that video, haven't played a game of D&D since March, yet magically there's like a dozen D&D related build videos that came out in that time. Because I don't need to, like, you know, my content is formed from a variety of sources. It's not just, oh, I'm making a video because this is what I made for myself for my game this week. No, that type of channel cannot exist and cannot succeed in a sustainable way. That's a big misconception a lot of people have about hobby channels and maybe becoming a hobby channel, is that if you think you can be a hobby channel and just be like, this is my, like what I'm doing this week, that's very hard to do. Some people have a magic sauce that can do that. Trent from Miscast can just be like, I don't know, I sculpted these things this week. That's just what I did. And it's a beautiful video and it's great. And it is just him and his journey. But when you see channels that are more like, we'll call them project channels, where you could like look at, it's like the thumbnails are like, that's a project, this is a project. What project do I want to watch built, or what tutorial or whatever? You can't do that and have it just be, that's what you were making as a GM. It doesn't work. So my content is created by either something that, yes, I made because I wanted to make it, I needed it for myself. That's one type of video. The other one is, what is something that I think is just timed well that would resonate and do well? Like what is a good, smart thing to build right now for people? It's like, hey, I've been seeing people talk a lot about, there's this new adventure that came out, and it's in the Underdark. Maybe I'll teach people how to make fucking mushrooms in the Underdark, because people are looking for that right now. And then for me, a big part of it is sponsors. You know, like a lot of my content is sponsored, and I've chosen to go the route of symbiotic sponsorship rather than just blatant, like, you know, Audible, Skillshare, Squarespace. You know, I'll do like the odd time, and I get a lot of those offers, but I prefer to be like, hey, you're a hobby company, I'm a hobby channel. Let's
work a deal. Yeah.
And for me, the great relationship I found is with the various 3D printing services. You know, that's a big hot thing that's happening. There's a lot of companies providing all these sculpts and amazing things, and they're looking to promote to my audience. That is their demographic. So why not do a sponsored thing with them? It makes sense, because it's like, okay, yeah, I'll tell you for a minute and a half about their Patreon service or whatever, but also it's a video about painting a zombie or a dwarf or whatever. Like, it's relevant. And that is what dictates my content more than what I'm doing as a hobby. Today, like that base that I was talking about that failed, it was a miniature of a tiger monk. I would never use that in a game. That is not my vibe.
Is that a Christine Van Patten little movement happening there?
I don't even know who that is. Christine Van Patten.
I think that's the sculptor of it. She's been sending them out to like Mike Disney. Painted up a tiger monk, and Eeny Meeny's painted up one on Twitch.
I don't think it's going to be the same one, because this is a thing that I know they just got me the files were just completed.
Just made, okay.
like I printed it on the weekend. They finished the supports on it the day before.
Okay.
Because I have to get the stuff in advance before their month's patrons or whatever get it. But for me, like, it was a tiger monk, like it's not the kind of thing that I would use in one of my games. It's not the kind of character I would ever play. It's just not me at all.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I made, and that's because that was the theme. You know, I have, you know, business end of things. I have a, you know, old-fashioned paper calendar here. I can tell you what my next 11 videos, I know what the next 11 weeks of my life are for builds and videos, because each one of them relates to a sponsor. And I can tell you that they're not Warhammer, right? Like, I would love it. Like, there's some, you know, the video that it is coming out this week as of this recording, it's a D&D miniature for a company sponsor that I'm doing up. I made it into Warhammer thing. So
Nice.
it is a D&D monster, but for me it's a Demon Prince of Nurgle.
Awesome.
So I kind of like took those two things and jammed them together. But then after that, it's a Tiger Monk, and then it's like a Rogue Trap related thing, and then it's a what do we got after that? There's a vampire thing, and then there's a Frost Giant thing. There's something to do with demons. Like these are all dictated for me by my business.
Sure.
As much as my channel is me showing you me as a person and my hobby, it's also a business, and content is made in a business sense. So yeah, anyone who's worried that all of a sudden it's just gonna be all Warhammer, no. It's just that, you know, I can speak to Warhammer from a bit more of an enlightened perspective than I could have in the past. I made Warhammer terrain previously, but I did it just assuming, hey, this would probably be cool for Warhammer. I don't know, it's that style. I want to make something futuristic. I'm going to call it Warhammer or Kill Team or Necromunda or whatever. But now I'm learning, and it's like, okay, so these are the rules for terrain in 9th edition 40K. So maybe actually it would make sense if I gave it a base like this, so that it can, you know, I can just do things with a better perspective when they come up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, because like right now there are channels I've never seen before, like getting crazy hits because of 9th edition, and of course that's going to taper off pretty fast here. You know, we probably have another, 6 weeks of it, to be totally honest. You know, before like something else shiny, we go squirrel and we run off in another direction. And so that, like, for me, like, I'm way more into like the non date stamped, sort of like content. I like going back and watching old videos and just seeing things, and there'll be times where I'll miss a couple and I'll just go back and I'll just marathon them. And like, I love the fact that it doesn't feel, your content never feels like I'm being sold to, and that's really cool.
Which is a good thing to hear, because like my content could arguably be criticized for being heavily sponsor based. It is like, it's the vast majority of my videos have a sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I'm really cognizant of the types of sponsors that I take and how I present them as sponsors. And, I would like to think I've done a good job of picking relatable sponsors that are worth my viewers' time. Like, I want to show you guys things that you want to see.
Right.
Like,
right.
No, not everybody will want to see it, but it's nice when, oh man, I'm glad that there was an ad spot in this because I want that thing. It's cool. So I try to do that, and I try to like push it in a organic way, not just, I will do things with the product that's not what they were intended for. Like,
right.
And someone's has a model that's a D&D monster, and it comes with a fucking book with a stat block for 5th edition. I'm like, nope, it's Nurgle, right? and that's I like doing that, and I also, that's part of my relationship with sponsors is, okay, this is how I do it. This is my rate. Just so you know, you have absolutely no input over the content.
Yeah.
You do the product. What you're paying me for is my experience, my audience, my platform, and the trust that you can put in me as a content creator and be like, here's the product, do whatever the fuck you want. And my sponsors don't get to see the video until the same day everybody else gets to see it. There's no revisions, there's no script. It literally says in my contract that all opinions expressed will be my own, and I will work with the best interest of portraying it in a positive light. But like, if it is what it is, like, if it's shitty, it's shitty. But then again, I also don't criticize a lot of product because I don't commit to. It's easy to tell if something's a stinker before you get on it, right? Like, and I also have a clause in my contract where it's I don't accept payment until I've received the product, because I want to look at it and go, nope, this is garbage. I cannot promote this. So I'm glad. So because you haven't paid me yet, we can just go our separate ways, right?
That's pretty smart. That's actually really smart, you know, and like, I don't know if a lot of people would have thought of it that way. I'm always of the mind of like, give me half now and then half when the video launches. You know,
I like secrets of behind the screen. The way I work is, this is the rate, this is the time it's coming out. Give me the product. Once I get the product and I say yeah to go, you pay me in full before I start filming, because I don't know if your Kickstarter is going to fold next month, and it's not my fucking problem if it does. If I've already produced content for that, I want to get paid for the time I put into it. But because I'm taking that up front like that, you know, that's why I want to make sure that it's a product that I can believe in.
Right.
And there has been a few times where I've gotten stuff and I've said, no, we're not doing this because it's not something I feel comfortable with promoting or using. So we're just not going to, but you haven't paid me, so there's no loss, right? I don't have to go through the awkward like return situation, or deposit or whatever. But for the most part, I can usually cut those bad things out before it even hits that point, because I get on average, I would say 5 offers every single day for products to sponsor.
Wow.
So I can really thin the herd in advance and just look at it and go, nope, 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 nope. And go, this is probably good, this is probably good, to get a bit more information and gauge if it's something. And now with the 3D printing companies, it's a lot easier because their model is all the same. It's just do I like your style? You know,
right.
Do you have a Patreon that's been going, or a subscription service that has members? I'm going to go on your Facebook. Oh, do I see people complaining that they're not getting their files in time for the month? Nope, everybody looks happy. Okay, models are models. I'll print them out and I'll paint them. You know? So it's a little bit easier in that sense. Kickstarter is a little bit tricky because Kickstarter is a leap of faith. And I tend to only work with companies who are established, who have done previous Kickstarters that have fulfilled and are coming back for another one.
Sure.
You know, I don't want to be the guy that promotes some Kickstarter that looks super cool and then all my viewers go and get it and then they get fucked by a company that doesn't deliver. I don't want that. Yeah. You know, I can't guarantee it never happens, but I really do try to avoid that.
Yeah. Well, it's just such a weird time for content creation. And I think that you are doing it right. You know, like you have your bottom line that you're keeping in view, but you understand that you have a loyal audience that you can't take for granted either. Because I think that like there's a very weird thing that happens where when you start getting to like, well, these people, I have 270,000, you know, followers. They're just going to show up regardless. Yeah. Like that sort of hubris fucking is at like a death's door, you know, like
take viewership for granted. Because it is fickle. I have done what not a lot of content creators are able to do, which is continuous growth, you know, and everything always is moving forward and up, and there's been no big drops or lulls or slow spots. You know, there's been a few fast spots, but for the most part it's steady, dependable growth. And part of that, I think, is that I have always from day one been hyper aware of my audience, and how diverse it is in their needs and their wants, and I've been really cognizant of that and try to balance it. Also, I've been doing Patreon for a very long time now. I was one of the first hobby YouTubers to do Patreon, so I've been doing it for a long time. That I have people who have been in there for years, like
wow,
continuing for years and years. And so there's been moments in my progression as a content creator where I've had to make certain big decisions, like, hey, I'm going to start doing sponsors. I'm going to start doing review videos as a second video. I'm going to stop doing review videos, like big changes, macro level changes. And when I've done those, I've considered the audience, but I've also been able to turn to that support base on Patreon as people that I know who have been in it for the long haul and truly are supportive and really, really matter. And I've been like, how do you guys feel about this? Like, how does it, like when I started doing my first sponsor spot, I'm like, I'm thinking about doing some sponsor spots to help the channel financially. How do you feel about that? I don't want it to make it feel like, since you're paying on Patreon, that, you know, I shouldn't be doing this, or maybe if I'm doing this, that you don't need to continue. Like, where does it sit? And, you know, much to my blessing, like it's like 99.9% responsive. We support you on Patreon because we want you to succeed. We want you to be doing well. And if taking sponsorships or doing reviews or not doing reviews or doing this or not doing that is a success, that's why we're here, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's really important to me. I don't give a fuck about what Johnny Dickhead comments, too many ads or sponsorship shill. I don't care about that guy, because that guy's in and out. He just showed up to watch a video, clicked it, and he's gone. He is not he's not a friend. He's not the guy that I'm going to connect with week in, week out, who's going to tune in and watch my videos to hang out with Jeremy for 15 minutes on a Friday morning. Those people care about me.
Yeah.
Care about success. And so I make decisions based on that. So that's why, like, sometimes when I do something that maybe doesn't sit well with them, that hurts. You know, those cut deep if it's like, oh, I don't like this or whatever. But that Warhammer video, like, you know, that could have, the way that video ran and was presented, a lot of people could have easily misinterpreted it as, oh, I guess this channel's not about D&D anymore. I guess it's a Warhammer channel. I guess we're all fucked. But
Right.
that kind of is the reaction I expected from the internet, because the internet kind of reacts in that way, and it didn't. It, like, there was a handful of people who made comments kind of like, oh, I hope you still make some D&D stuff. But like, even the ones who made those comments were doing it in a pretty like conservative, rational way.
Right.
It didn't get the backlash I thought it would. And I think the reason for that is because I've created and nurtured a strong connection with the audience. Despite it growing, it still does feel like just hanging out with me for a bit. And so, hey, this is just what I was doing this week. And so it's okay.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome. And I love it. I love your videos. I love the fact that you put yourself out there to do that, you know, it feels honest and true. And, you know, I think that that's something that, I mean, it's not rare, but it's rare that it doesn't have that burnout vibe, you know, like it just kind of always just feels like you're in it, you know?
I think that for the most part, if you were to kind of look across the sea of the hobby space on YouTube, you could list 10 or so of the most prolific creators.
Yeah.
And everybody would have pretty similar lists. If you look at all of us, I think that is the shared connection. I think that is the defining feature of successful channels. For every Miniac, there's 1,000 mini painters.
Yeah.
But there's only a couple Miniacs. There's only a couple Goober Towns. There's only a couple Miscasts. There's only a couple Black Magic Crafts.
Right.
Only a couple of us. And I think that is the theme that a lot of people are entering the YouTube space now with a lot of head start, so to speak, because of the work that we've done. We've created these corners of the hobby. We've made YouTube recognize them. We've made the algorithms recognize them.
Yeah.
We've provided hundreds of thousands of hours of content for people to watch and digest and dissect and go, this is what makes a good video. This is what makes a bad video. I'm going to buy a good camera to start with. I'm going to get a good microphone to start with. I'm going to pace my video well. I'm going to make a good thumbnail. They can study Blackmagic Craft. They can study Miniac and see what makes a good hobby video. They can replicate it.
Yeah.
But what you can't replicate is a connection.
Yeah.
You cannot. And that's why a lot of these channels, myself included, were able to get to the level of success that we were with an iPhone and iMovie.
Right.
Right? Some people might not be able to do that with a very expensive camera and a good microphone and even a good editor and all that stuff, because at the end of the day, YouTube is unique in that sense where you're digesting information and content that's not just informative. It is a hangout. It's a shared space. There are so many content creators that I watch that I do not care that much about what they're doing, but I like them. I like watching them. And
Echo Gillette. I watch her every time she releases a video, and I'm just like, I don't even care what you're doing. I just think that you're a funny person and that you're really entertaining, and I want to support you any way that I can. Like I have those same people. You're just like you could literally be making eggs, and I would give 2 fucks about it.
For
it's
sure.
Great.
One of my favorite content creators is an Australian guy who has never seen his face, only his hands, and all he does is make really boring videos where he makes bad pencil crayon drawings of maps. How fucking... Well, you know what? I watch every single video he makes because he calms me down. He puts me in a good headspace. Seems like a nice guy. I'd like to share coffee with him.
Sure. I just found Steady Crafton. Have you seen him yet? That little stupid ass puppet. Oh my God, I love it.
Craftsman is my favorite content creator on YouTube. If you were to force me to pick my favorite, is him.
It's magic. Here's my last stick of Cinnaburst gum. Look at all these flavor crystals. I think I'm going to save it for later. And he puts it back in. You fucking asshole. That's so awesome.
Yeah. He is a special person and needs to be protected at all costs.
It's in those little like bubbles. Oh my God. Where else? They can't exist anywhere else. Like I would love to say that, like when I was talking with Brent, I want Goobertown Hobbies to be like Mr. Rogers when he would go to the trumpet making, facility. And I want him to like go and examine how needite is made and shit like that. Like I want there to be content creation outside of these disposable 10-minute things on YouTube. I want to reach like a broader audience because the hobby space is so cool and creative. And when you have something like Steady Crafton, oh my God, it's just like pure magic.
I'm not going to say who or what because it's just a lot of like backroom casual talking, but there are a few creators who that is almost their end game goal.
Sure.
Is to make the Netflix documentary about tabletop crafters or war gamers or mini painters. There's a couple people who really want to do that. Like that is where they're driven to go, and that's the type of content they're trying to make, is that human story and that thing that anyone could watch, that someone who has no interest in the hobby could just watch because it's a good story, and that has not really happened in our space yet, with one exception in D&D, the Dwarvenaut, or is that what it's called?
Oh, dude, yeah, that's a great
documentary. Had a documentary about, and to me that was a groundbreaking thing. That documentary actually even existing was like a pivotal piece of kicking me in the ass to quitting my job and going full time, because the fact that documentary exists and can exist was like, no, this is a thing. Like this is a thing. I gotta carve out my space. But we need more. I think we're at the point where we need more of that. And I think certain content creators in their YouTube videos have far kind of gotten a lot further than just tutorials. Like this all started of, hey, I'm going to show you how you can make a tower for your wizard for your D&D game. First, you need to cut. That's where it all started. And it was just a product of necessity of, there are people who want to do a thing, I'm going to show them how to do a thing. But over the past 4 years, that's morphed into welcome to hobby time with insert creator, and it's just a journey, and it's a little mini documentary. Craftsman is, I don't know, like He's talking about injection molded plastic. I will never do that. I promise you, I will never do that. It's irrelevant because I'm watching his little story, and I think the person in our space who is the best at that is Trent. Like Miscast videos are little tiny micro documentaries, and I don't actually learn anything from them hobby. Like I don't learn any skills or whatever, but I get a lot of motivation and creativity out of them, right? And I think that's what we're starting to see in the hobby space on YouTube is there's kind of this, the bar has been set a lot higher for content to be a lot more than just how-to videos.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and I feel really fortunate that people have trusted talking to me about these things, because I think all of us wonder these questions. All of us wonder what the future is, and because like it sucks being just a consumer, because it even though you're not being sold to, I am buying.
Yeah, and like just taking it in, right?
Yeah, without having any idea of what you're doing, and like because there isn't like the commercial aspect of, I mean, like I do YouTube Premium because I fucking hate ads. So literally it is just me clicking through and just like trying to find everything on YouTube, and that level of content consumption is like a glut. It is excess all the time, and so like you want to know that all this time is going to pay off, all this time invested is going to be worth something in the end. And so that's why, like, for you, seeing you grow the way that you have and seeing Scott grow the way that he has, watching both of your channels since before you were, you were still contractors and he was still a software engineer. Like if fucking like I've seeing you guys take that leap, I was just like, God damn it, this is so inspiring. I'm so glad that I get to watch this, and to be able to have talked to you both now and hear both of your different opinions on where the future is going. I think it's really interesting. I think that this world, hopefully, people are really receptive to the new thing, because everybody will watch those like bored panda videos on Facebook that are like weird, like chop up versions of your videos.
I could spend an hour fucking complaining about that whole corner of the internet. That is my nemesis. That's my kryptonite. I fucking hate it.
Yeah.
I fight those companies with everything I have to make sure my content does not end up on it.
Sure.
Some people don't, because and some people will complain. Like I'll get a comment that's like, this video is about a wash, why are you talking about redecorating your kitchen? Yeah, because if you're just the guy that just tuned in to get a recipe, yeah, I get it, you don't care. But that's a micro transaction. I look for the macro. Like the Blackmagic Craft is an ongoing thing. It's a week in, week out, like it's a bigger picture thing. And I think that while that sort of mentality as a content creator doesn't appeal to every viewer,
sure,
I think it appeals to the vast majority of viewers. And I think that also it is the reason that a select few number of hobby channels have grown to audience sizes that far exceed what the hobby should be able to sustain. Even though the hobbies are big, the amount of hobby people watching YouTube for hobby things is smaller than should be giving what me and Scott are getting in terms of viewership. The reason for that is a large percentage of our viewers are not into the hobby or our hobby. I have a very tangible, and I don't know what the percentage is, but it is a notable segment of my viewership that are 50 to 70-year-old women who build fairy gardens.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
That is like a notable portion of my viewership. I don't care about D&D, Warhammer, whatever. They build fairy gardens. Today I had somebody sign up on Patreon who wrote a message who's like, she makes you know, the like ceramic haunted houses you get at Michael's. She is actually like a sculptor. She makes those ceramics and sells them. She doesn't play any tabletop games, but like is finding value in what I'm doing for her, and then has made a connection on it. There's people from so many different hobby spaces that connect. Railroad people, diorama builders, scale modelers, war gamers, tabletop crafters, action figure collectors are starting to come in to my space because they want to build a little thing to display their, you know, Black Series Boba Fett. Like there's all these different things, you know. I had one guy thanking me for me explaining glue on XPS foam because he was building a kayak. You know, there's all these different places that are coming together, and it's one thing to have them stumble upon it, get some valuable information, but to actually make them stay and watch the other videos about other things, and then not only stay, but then become your patron supporter. I'm not giving them that much fairy garden skill. But I must be giving them something else, which is a connection. And I think my goal is, like, my main thing to teach is to, you know, not be afraid and like just do it. Like, just do it. You can do this.
Yeah.
You can do this.
Yeah. The deep end is for winners, and the water is fucking fine. Just jump in.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. Like if you only learn one thing from me, it's just fucking do it. I don't care what you have to work with. Just do it. It's gonna be fine. So.
Yeah, dude, I feel you. We have gone on for so long, and I love it. But we should probably wrap up.
Yeah.
Jeremy, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me tonight. This has been really special, and I'm thrilled to see where your channel goes. I think that you're a gem, an absolute gem, and I love it.
It's been a pleasure, and the main reason I decided to come on is because I should mention at the start is that I've thoroughly enjoyed recently listening to your chats with Brent, and I kind of remember now. I watched like 4 in a row over the past week, so they're really good. I haven't seen the Scott one yet because that hasn't aired, so I'm looking forward to that because I see what he has to say. I talked to him all. He's a good friend, but I'm really curious to see what he has to say.
It's going to be going up this Saturday, but by the time the people hear me say that, it will have been out for probably 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited too. I hope I did it justice. So I think it'll be good. But Jeremy, thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to plug before we wrap up today?
Oh man, if somebody's made it through 2.5 hours of this, I think they already know who I am and where to go.
They will. I
will plug something. I will say, go watch Craftsman Steady Crafting and go watch Miscast.
Yeah.
Go spend your next 2 hours of allotted viewing time to those 2 channels. I'll plug those 2 good people.
Perfect. That sounds great. All right, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Hobby Time in the Murder Basement. I so appreciate your support. If you want to see more hobby content, hop on over to twitch.tv/Heath Aldrich to see all of your fun hobby content streaming whenever I get a free chance. If you like listening to these episodes in more of a podcast form, I should be on all of your favorite podcasting apps. Make sure that you like and subscribe to me there. If you can, leave me a 5-star review. I'd really appreciate it. Have a nice rest of your day, and we'll be talking to you soon.